Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Really cool blade today. This is the cold steel large Espada. Certainly large deserves to be in the name of this knife. It is a big folding knife. Now it's not the biggest. There is actually another size up in this blade, which would be just crazy, right? Anyway, not the most practical knife in my collection. However, you guys know if you've watched any of my Charade SCH 300 series of videos that doesn't matter to me. I like a few different blades that are not terribly practical, but they're just really cool. And certainly this is one of those. Okay, really great knife and going to be very positive, even though, let's just say this right off the bat, I'm not going to say this is great for everyday carry for most people. All right, before I get into the rest of the video, I want to give a quick shout out to Warriors and Wonders. Warriors and Wonders is a knife retailer out west. They do a great job. I've gotten a few different products from them and I've been really impressed. So, if you're looking for a blade, go ahead and search all the usual suspects, Amazon, eBay, Knife Center, Knife Works, wherever else you normally look. But add Warriors and Wonders to the list because I have found that on more than one occasion they've had a very competitive price. And they won't always have the most competitive price and you probably won't always choose to buy from them, but at least add them to your list of places to check out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. All right, now let's get back into this particular blade and talk about size and weight. Of course, that's one of the things that really stands out. This is a big blade, okay? It's 12.5 inches overall. You've got 5.5 inch blade and about a 7.25 inch handle. All of that weighs in at 8.6 ounces. So it's pretty heavy, although when you talk about, a size to weight ratio, it actually does pretty well. You're not going to see too many blades in this size, period. But you're not going to see many in this size that weigh as little as this one does, okay? And that's partially because it's got that typical cold steel construction where the handle is predominantly G10. There is a little bit of stainless, or there is a little bit of steel, it is stainless steel, back here sort of beside the lock, and that must be adding strength to the locking mechanism. That's my only guess about that. I know others don't have it, so my Recon 1, for example, if you look back at the back of it, does not have those stainless steel inserts. By the way, I have stripped this knife since I made the review of it, and I much prefer it in this configuration. All right, so let's get back to the blade we're looking at. Again, 12.5 inches, 5.5 inch blade, 7.25 inch handle. So a big blade, 8.6 ounces. Now let's zoom in a little bit and talk about some of the specifics, starting with, of course, the blade. So let's see, we'll come in here, there we go. So there's that blade. You can see that it is a very sweeping clip point with a deep hollow grind, this nice swedge on top. You've got a fairly thick piece of steel here, about 1/8 of an inch, at the very least 1/8 of an inch. So that blade is, by the way, almost all belly, and so with that hollow grind and all that belly, this is going to be a great slicer, and I can tell you that it is a great slicer. If you're one of those guys who likes to set up all the water bottles and cut into them like we all juggle knives, this is going to be a knife that excels at that job, okay? Not only that, but because of the clip point, you have this very acute point. So this is not only going to be a great slicer, but a super good piercer as well. Now, of course, I don't recommend this with a folding knife, but if you do have to chop something, again, this is going to chop fairly well. And there is a video I've seen, the Triad Lock will take it. I'm sure Cold Steel wouldn't say, hey, yeah, go ahead and do whatever you want with it. But I've seen a guy chop down a tree with a Raja 2 and be quite successful at it, okay? So even chopping is not going to mess up this lock. We'll talk about that later though. Let's get back to the blade. This blade is ASA 8A steel, although it does have Cold Steel's heat treatment and sub-zero quench, which does a great job. Holds an edge very well. And of course it comes really sharp in the first place. So got this really cool looking blade. The bead blast finish is the only thing that I'm only so on. Maybe I would prefer a satin or even a polished finish on this. I don't know. The other version, by the way, there's sort of a classy version of this knife, and it does have a sort of satin finish on it, okay? So that's the blade. Very, very cool blade, all right? Gotta say, I really, really like this. Super useful. Now, when we talk about cutting tasks, one of the things that I actually had to do, I was working on the top of a table, and it had bowed up like this, and I actually used this knife two-handed. And because of its size and because of the blade size, I was able to kind of push the knife along the wooden surface like this and actually plane with this. Now that's not something you could do with most blades, but because of the size of this and because of the blade shape, it actually worked really well for that. So there are things that a large blade is going to actually help you with. Come on, camera, focus better. There we go. I think we're okay now. All right, so that's the blade. Very, very useful blade. Great slicer, even a great chopper, and of course, very acute point for piercing. Now, of course, you take one look at this blade and you know that it's designed primarily for combat purposes, for self-defense or even offense. It's going to stab like crazy. It's going to slice very, very effectively. That does not mean that if you own this knife, it's the only possible reason to own it. As I've just pointed out, there are other very, very good uses. I've done everything from food prep to cardboard cutting to, you know, woodworking, like cutting branches off of trees to, as I said, woodworking. And this blade just performs really, really well. Okay, so that's the blade. Now, lockup and deployment, I am going to back up just a little bit for that discussion. There we go, lockup and deployment. So lockup and deployment, it is the triad lock. So it's super, super strong. On my channel, I recently added to favorites a video where Andrew Demko in the Cold Steel R&D lab tests this lock for strength while overstriking and spine whacking and then actually hanging. He doesn't test this knife, he tests this lock. And the thing does really, really well, okay? The knife is the triad lock is exceptionally strong. Now it's a comparison between that and the Tatanka. If I remember, I'll put it in the description box down below. That's my goal here. If I forget, hey, somebody just shoot me a quick message and say, hey dude, you said you were gonna put this in, and I'll add it later. But hopefully I'm gonna stick to my word. I'm gonna add that in the description below or even in a little notation somewhere here on the screen. Okay, so super, super, super strong lock. Now, I wanna say this. I've got a couple of other cold steels here. Here is my American Lawman, great little blade. The lockup though is a little, I don't know, it's very tight and very strong, but it's just not very smooth. You know, it takes a lot of finger strength to release the lock, and it's just not super smooth as you're opening and closing it. Here is my Recon 1. I've recently stripped this knife and I really like it in this configuration. Again though, it's not what I would describe as smooth. Now it is a free dropper, you know, and I'm not complaining. I really like the action on these knives, and in fact this one can even be flipped open fairly quickly. However, in terms of the just smoothness and the way it feels, neither one of those two blades feel as nice. This is just perfect. It just feels like quality. Now having said that, I would not recommend, nor have I even tried to flip this out. I try to open it with a fair degree of control just because of the size and also because of a bad story I'll tell you. One time I was trying to flip open my large Voyager and I didn't get it all the way. It got to about this point and it slammed down and it did cut the skin off the end of my finger here, okay? So be aware if you're gonna mess with this knife, there's some danger here and you may want to get in the habit of even closing this two-handed because you do have your fingers there when you're actuating that lock. The other option is to always make sure that you get a finger up into this choil, because if you notice, see how that can't close on you? That's worth paying attention to, okay? So if you're closing this and you've got your fingers right up here, you're pretty safe. You can't really close it on your fingers until you get them out of the way and then close it. But just be aware that these big folding knives from Cold Steel, there's a bit of a danger to, especially the tips of your fingers. when opening and closing them. Now, having said that, very, very smooth lockup. And one more thing, and I'll put a little video in here either at the very end or maybe at the beginning. Somewhere here, you should see a video of me waving this open. This wave feature works really well. It's very consistent. It's very easy. Sometimes the knife will want to come open even when you're just taking it out of your pocket. And I'll quickly demonstrate how easily that works just with my finger here. All I'm doing is kind of touching this, and you know, it just comes open super, super easily, okay? So the wave feature works really, really well on this. In fact, it works better than on my Kershaw Emerson collab knife. It's a better opening feature than even on that. So very, very good wave feature on this. All right, now let's carry on and talk about the handle. We'll zoom in again for this portion so that I can talk about things and point them out to you. Okay, so there's the handle on this. One of the cool things about this handle is the variation that it allows. Now, standard grip I would say is sort of like this, you know, and it's very comfortable, and really there's a lot of room here, even though there is sort of a choil here and another choil back here, or a cutout here. That, even though that's kind of specific for this grip, you could have hands considerably bigger than mine and it would still be comfortable. Now, in addition to this, what I would call sort of the standard grip, you can choke all the way up to here because of this unsharpened portion of blade and get really, really tight in for more control. You can also choke way down to here or even to here on that pistol grip. Okay, let me zoom out just a little on that for you. Come on. Now the camera's not going to cooperate with me. Sorry about that. All right, well, you're going to have to take my word for how well that works. Choking down to this position is fairly effective. Okay, and now this remote is not going to work at all. Come on, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to keep this right here for fear that I freeze up again like I did a second ago, and we're going to have to go through the rest of the video just like this. Now, handle then is very comfortable. It's very grippy G10, like all of Cold Steel's G10. Although I will say this, I find this pocket clip goes in and out of pocket a little easier, and I have not done any modification. A lot of times I will take this off and just tweak it a little bit to loosen it up. I haven't done that on this knife, and it works great. So, you know, no real issue there. Now, I'm not a big thing. You know, I know Nut and Fancy has that whole JB Weld mod where he's going to put epoxy in here. I don't know. I think that's a lot of work for very little return, when really all you could do is, you know, pry this up a little bit and you're good to go. So the clip here is like any Cold Steel clip. It's pretty tight, but it's not unreasonable. Okay, I don't have a big problem getting this in and out of my pocket. Although I have a lot of knives and my pockets are pretty ripped up anyway, so I can't really accuse my Cold Steel knives of doing that, but my pockets are pretty torn up. So there you go. That's the main thing about the pocket clip. Otherwise, retention is very good. And again, I know I harp on this all the time, but this handle does really well, both for its shape and its texturing, okay? So that's what I like to see, shape and texturing combined to make a very grippy handle. The liners here, are the steel inserts here, do have some jimping, and it's okay. It's not great. All right, it's there, but you can see my thumb moves pretty easily. I definitely don't feel locked in by any means, but it is there and will add a little bit of grip, maybe more so if you're wearing gloves. Overall, I think this is a really, really cool blade, okay? I carry it probably more than is reasonable, and sometimes I have been in situations. I was at McDonald's the other day, and my son came up and said, "Daddy, can you open this yogurt thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I went to pull out my pocket knife, and this is what I had. Needless to say, I got out the multi-tool and used that instead. So there will be times where you go, "Oh man, okay, it's maybe a little bit too big for this environment," but it's still a stinking cool knife. And it's one that if you are a collector and if you want to show your knives to other people, people are going to be pretty impressed by this thing, because it is very, very impressive. Certainly great to use, great to carry. I just really am a big fan of the cold steel large Espada, and probably if you're thinking of one and if you have a use for it, boy, you won't be disappointed either. Obviously, one last comment about the combat capability of this knife. You know, you've got a ton of reach. No one is going to get even close to you. You've got a ton of slicing and piercing power. This could potentially be a very dangerous weapon, and so dangerous in fact that I would say you better think long and hard if you're planning to use this as a self-defense tool. It is, you know, man, it's every bit as dangerous as a gun, okay? So if you wouldn't carry a gun, don't carry this. On the other hand, if you do have a gun and maybe you're looking for something for firearm backup, maybe you're a soldier, police officer, whatever, someone who really may need a knife to defend their life, yeah, this is going to do the job, no question. All right. Otherwise, though, it's just a really well-built, really reliable tool, and I don't think you'll be disappointed in quality or usability at all with the cold steel large Espada. There you go, YouTube. We'll talk to you later.